Welcome to Conversations with Dr. Skip Mason,
pastor, preacher, historian, author,
teacher, librarian, archivist, world traveler,
collector, family historian, avid reader, and creator of the popular Vanishing Black Atlanta Facebook page.
But a lot of folks who love history.
Most importantly, he's our dad, who loves his family and who taught us the importance of our history and having important conversations.
Join him now for this episode of Conversations with Dr. Skip.
My brothers and my sisters, good afternoon and welcome to another conversation, Facebook Live, CME150. Today, across our Zion is the Connectional Stewardess Day or National Stewardess Day. There have been dedication services as we celebrate those wonderful women who do so much for our church. I am delighted to welcome you today. First, let me greet our Senior Bishop Lawrence L. Reddick III and Dr. Wendy Jones Reddick, our First Lady. Let me greet Bishop Kenneth Wayne Carter and Sister Roselle Carter. Bishop Carter is the chairman of the College of Bishops and the Distinguished College of Bishops and their spouses. Let me also greet the chair of the CIT committee, Bishop James B. Walker, Mrs. Dolores Walker, and my bishop and the co-chair of the CIT committee, Bishop Thomas Lewis Brown Sr. and Dr. Louise Baker Brown. And let me acknowledge and thank Dr. Teresa Duhart for her tremendous support. And so today is Connectional Stewardess Day. The women who wear the white, the women who sit on the front rows of the church, and who are looking forward, but also looking side-eye, who are looking at every detail. See, I know a little bit about stewardess. I grew up as the son of a stewardess. My mother, Dolores Hughes, a member of West Side Community CME Church in Atlanta, Georgia. And let me put this picture up. Mom is second from the right. Mom served as a stewardess for 36 years, and now she is steward emeritus. So I can remember and recall what it was like when it was her time to do the linen. You know, that was a national holiday in our house. You know, when it was her time to iron and get ready for communion. But they do more than just wear white. You know, they in addition to setting God's table, and they do it with such care, you know, and with such love. You know, they support the pastor, they support the church and its efforts. And so we have two of the best to do it in not only in our denomination, but I would say across the world. We have a Connectional president, Sister Jolinda Duggar. We have one of the Connectional vice presidents, Diana Duncan. And then, of course, we are so blessed to have the distinguished General Secretary of Ministry, Dr. Clifford Harris, and all of them have gathered here today to talk about the important role of the ministry, because it is a ministry that you are doing, that you are serving in God's house. Let me welcome each of you to Conversations. It's so good to have you all here. And I'm going to begin with you, Sister Duggar, as the Connectional president. What is a steward? Somebody may be trying to figure out, well, what do these women in white do? And won't you share a little bit just about what a stewardess is?
Okay, thank you. Thank you for having me, Dr. Mason. As you say, a stewardess is more than those that you see on the front row wearing white. Our motto is we serve the table of the ministry, the table of the poor, and the table of the Lord. Most times they see us on the first Sunday serving communion. That's one of our main functions. But we have other things that we do. Like I said, we serve the table of the poor. And then another important is that we serve the table of the ministry. That is that we are to be there for the pastor and his family, see to their needs. But we work in conjunction with stewards to set the pastor's salary. Anything else that is assigned to us by the pastor. So there are many functions that we do.
Sister Duncan, how did you become a stewardess? And when you were appointed by your pastor, what did you have to be trained? Tell us a little bit about your journey to become a stewardess, and then I'm going to share with Sister Duncan.
Well, my journey, I guess, began in my home church. My home church is Carter Chapel CME Church in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, which is now renamed New Destiny. Pastor there is Reverend Edward Neal. That's where I got my start. Watching my grandmother, my mother, and the other stewardesses. So I guess that's where I just was fascinated by their work. Then as I got older and moved to Jackson, Tennessee, became a member of Mother Liberty. In the early 90s, I was appointed as a stewardess. And to become a stewardess, you must be recommended by the pastor and approved by the quarterly conference. Early 90s, I was appointed by one of our former pastors, Reverend T.R. Crosley. Well, he appointed me, but growing up watching, I said stewardesses do, but I didn't have proper training. So it came maybe 5 years later, Dr. Carmichael Crutchfield was appointed the pastor and is our pastor now. So he appointed me, and I told him, I had been appointed before, but I didn't have proper training. And that's an issue that we have across the connection is the training. So he saw to it that I got the manual at the time, put me with the stewardesses I watched, and as they say, the rest is history.
And so
but it's just.
And we'll come back in a moment and talk about the training of stewardess and what is required. Sister Duncan, tell us about your journey, where you're a member of what church and how long you've been serving, and what you feel is a vital and important function of a stewardess.
Well, thank you for having me, Skip. I am a member of Parkwood Institutional CME Church in Charlotte, North Carolina, where my pastor is Reverend Dr. Kathy C. Jones, and my bishop is Bishop James B. Walker, and our elder on the Durham district, which Parkwood falls under, is Elder Harris. And pretty much I've been a stewardess for at least 18 plus years. And my grandmother was a stewardess. My aunt was a stewardess. And I just, back when during Bishop Helton's time, his sister-in-law, I've worked under her. I'm an officer. I'm a stewardess under the Durham district as well as the annual conference. And basic qualifications to me for a stewardess is that you got to have a love of God and your neighbor in your heart. You have to have a compassion to do this. It's a divine compassion. You just don't jump into it. You have to have a mind of peace and spirit of forgiveness and a commitment to the Christian stewardship and a willingness to serve in this present age. It gives me great pleasure and joy. And when I was selected as the vice president elected as vice president for the connectional level, that was the ultimate for me. I love being a stewardess, and in going along with what my president has said, we also have to assist with the two major boards in the church are the stewardess and the stewardess, and we set the pastor's salary as well as the budget of the church. So there are just a lot of duties that comes along with this that I enjoy doing.
And you've been serving for how long?
18 plus years.
18 plus years.
And I also trained under our connectional general officer, Reverend Roderick D. Lewis.
Yes.
So he was my pastor for about 9 years, and he was very meticulous during those 18 years.
I can imagine. We all know Dr. Lewis, and we understand his level of meticulousness. But we're glad to have Dr. Harris with us as the General Secretary of Lay Ministries. Dr. Harris, always a pleasure to have you and the insight that you bring. Talk about what the stewardess mean for our connectional church, for our church, if you would, please.
Dr. Mason, I believe you were speaking to me, and I am not able to hear you for some reason. I began hearing Sister Duncan. I heard Sister Duggar. Somewhere in the middle of Sister Duncan's remarks, so I lost.
You lost your sound.
I'm not able to hear you at all.
Okay.
And maybe I need to go out and come back in again.
Okay. Why don't you do that?
Try that.
Okay. Great.
Right.
Thank you. Well, as he comes back in, one of the things that I want to take a look at is the history of stewardess in our church. I shared this morning in our worship experience, and shout out to the wonderful stewardess of the West Mitchell Street CME Church. I certainly could not have a program on stewardess and not celebrate my own stewardess. And these are some pictures of the wonderful women who serve as stewardess under the dynamic leadership of Sister Joanne Bryant. So I need to be able to return back to West Mitchell in good standing because my stewardess tremendous. You understand?
Amen.
I understand.
Every pastor should have the wonderful support of their stewardess board. But let me share this. In 1886, there was a resolution designating the organization as a ladies' auxiliary to the stewards to be known as the stewardess. It was presented, but it was also rejected. And and when it was presented, it was said that the men laughed and scoffed at that. Finally, another resolution was presented to create the stewardess and to have it confirmed by the General Conference. In 1894, the office of stewardess should be remembered that they were not officers of the church at the time. And so they were not members of the quarterly conference. And let's see what we have here. I might have one or two of these out of order. But once it was approved, the establishment of the stewardess was the first step in empowering women in the CME church. And we want to talk about that. And in that, there were two questions regarding the stewardess. There should be a board of stewardess in each circuit, station, or mission, who shall be elected by and are members of the quarterly conference. Their number and mode of election shall be like that of the board of stewards. The pastor shall have the right, if he thinks it's necessary, to appoint an auxiliary board of stewardess, and it shall be the duty of stewardess to serve the table of the Lord, the table of the poor, and the table of the ministry, and to assist in the collection of general funds, presiding elder, and pastor's salary and to do any other work that might be assigned. So that much has not changed since its establishment. But you know, we can say emphatically, you know, that the role of the stewardess is also one of a witness and testimony of God's grace, you know, and mercy. I mean, first of all, as stewardess, you have to have a relationship with the Lord.
Yes.
You know,
most definitely.
Absolutely.
Most definitely.
Yeah. And I want you to talk about that. Then I'm gonna bring Dr. Harris in because you know I grew up in the church, and of course my pastors, Reverend Napier, Reverend Thompson, Reverend Jerome B. Price, Reverend Stephen Delane, and Reverend Reggie Barnes. You know, when selecting the role of a stewardess, a person to serve, lots of prayer. You know, and I remember, you know, Reverend Price saying that when you're selecting a stewardess, you know, you go and pray, you know, about it as you would with any office at all. Any of you want to share anything with regards to selecting stewardess to serve?
Well, one thing I know that a lot of times when we're reaching out and looking for ladies to possibly join the stewardess board, one of the things they say is, well, I got to get myself right with God. I'm not, you know, I'm not all that I should be. But who among us are? We all are a work in progress. I think that if any of us who are stewardesses now went by that, we would have no one. But as with anything, as with the minister, it's an ongoing process. And you have to have a dedication and a love for God, a love for church, and a love for people. You know, because as you say, you see us sitting on the front row. But we're also there. We're there and we're praying.
Yes.
You know, as they say in the Baptist church, they call it the mother's board.
That's
you know,
right.
We are the mothers of the church. We should be praying over and watching over our children. That includes the pastor, the stewards, everyone, all members of the congregation. I have a pastor that we've talked about it, and we are the vanguards of the Spirit. You know, when it comes to praying, the stewards should be the first ones there at the altar when there's prayer meeting. So we should always, and not only do we need to, our life is a witness not only in the church, but also on the outside. So you can't be one thing in the church and then another thing on the outside. Your witness has to carry with you. You know, because people are, you know, and I tell people when visitors and new people walk into the church, you know, they see the pastor in the choir in the pulpit, and they see the choir, but they also see us. You know, we stand out as we are on the front row, and a lot of times they're saying, "Well, who are they? What are they?"
Right.
So you know that light. You have to carry that light and that witness wherever we go.
Wherever you go.
And I also feel that, you know, stewardess also has to be mindful that we are reverent of God, and we have to put God first. So it doesn't matter. A lot of times you hear people say, well, I don't like the uniforms, or I don't want to this, and why I can't wear lipstick. And my thing is, you're representing God. And when they look at you, when anyone looks at you, this mother of the church, they should be able to see a reference of God. And you don't need all of that to show what you are about, because they need to see heart.
Absolutely. Dr. Harris, while we have you, we know you're having some connection issues, but please share your thoughts about the importance of the ministry of the stewardess, please.
Yes. Thank you, Dr. Mason. As the General Secretary of Lay Ministry and the stewardesses being under the umbrella of the Department of Lay Ministry, I'm very appreciative of this particular department and the ministry that they carry on. My first appreciation and affection for the stewardess ministry began when I was growing up at a church my father was pastoring, Collins Chapel CME Church in Muskogee. And during that time, I remember during communion services that when everyone else had communed and when the stewardesses would come, he would always say or refer to them as those whose robes have been washed white, and the purity and the sanctity of which they should be regarded. And I find it a joy to be able to work with and assist the stewardesses in their ministry and helping them to put together a stewardess manual that uh, assists all the stewardesses across our Zion. And I think this is one of the most sacred ministries within our church, and that it should be regarded as such. I see it as one of the most consistent uh, ministries year in and year out in relation to how those who are part of this ministry serve. They are serious about it. And I think it's also important that I think it's already been brought out how important it is for the stewardess to be a the ministry or the can you hear me, Dr. Mason?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. I can't hear you, but I'll just keep talking since you can hear me. The fact that the stewardesses are an intricate part of the planning and determining the compensation of the pastor. And I believe that in some cases that's looked over and left out. The stewards are to work with them, and they should never put themselves in a place where they are left out, because that's an intricate part of their responsibility. Their voice should be heard. And in relation to doing ministry in and of itself, we define ministry as responding to the needs of our neighbor. And our neighbor might be the person sitting next to us in church, or it might be somebody in the community. And most of our students, many of them, are affiliated with the Missionary Society, and they have and our students in my particular church have ministry efforts that they employ apart from the work that they do with the missionaries each and every year. And I think that if students are not doing that on their own, then they should find a way to be able to step up and begin to do some of those ministry efforts within the church, and particularly in the community, and not just during the time that it's Christmas and New Year's, Thanksgiving, or so forth and so on. And that's not certainly that's not a dig at the students, but that's to say that all of us who are part of the church, regardless of what ministry or position that we find ourselves in, that should be the heart of what we are doing. Yes. Many times talk about, you hear people say, well, I want to go to a church where they're doing ministry. Well, we're doing ministry in the CME church. We just have to redefine, retool our efforts in some cases. But as far as my overall thought and affection and appreciation for the stewardess ministry, it's very strong, and I appreciate these two stewardesses who are on with you today, and all the others who show up not only on the first Sunday, but every day in the life and witness of our church.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Harris. Really appreciate that. So let me ask you, President Duggar, what is the future of Stewardess? Given that in many churches we find membership decreasing, we find that there are not a lot of younger people who are interested, if you will, is there a challenge? And Vice President Duncan, you can chime in either as well. Is there a challenge? Do you think in the next 5-10 years we're going to have difficulty finding women who are prepared to step into that role? What are your thoughts? And what are you doing as president of the Connectional board to address some of those issues?
Yeah. Well, Dr. Mason, that is a real issue. And whenever we come together on the Connectional level where we meet at the Unity Summit, that's one of the topics that we do talk about a lot. It is a struggle, but we're hopeful. It's just like with anything else. We have to be positive. I think the one thing that we have to do in our churches, and that's start with our junior stewardess ministry. If we start them young, working with them, then there's hope that the ministry will continue. But we don't, we know in the back of our mind that that's an issue, but I guess I said we're hopeful. We're prayerful. We're hopeful and we're prayerful because with God, all things are possible.
Absolutely.
I agree with Sister Duggar. And one of the other things that I see is on the adult level, I don't see it fading out, but I just think that we're going to have to do more as the Connectional board to bring in more of the annual conference board to just kind of more as it says connection. We've got to be a little bit more connectional to so that they can see what we do, what we are actually about. And I feel like that one of the things that when we were at the Connectional level, the training, she puts forth training and brings us together. I think we just have to start reaching out more to each other. I tell you, the pandemic has brought more of us together as far as Zoom. We have had more meetings and connections this way than any other way. And that has been a blessing because the more you see each other, the more you talk to each other, the more things you learn. We discuss uniforms and just some of everything, what's going on in every area. We came together and I try to talk to the stewardess at every level, especially our annual conference levels. The president's Annie Hargan in the Carolina region has been very faithful and helps out a lot. And with the pandemic, just reaching out, letting them know, hey, pass out the communion, go, get on board. You got to be about getting out there and doing what we have been called to do, and not worry about whether or not we're seen, but just, if we are seen as who we are, workers.
So in a pandemic, as you all have mentioned, stewardessing has taken on a kind of a different role, if you will, particularly with driving services and having to wear a mask and going through all of these things in the parking lot. And so how has it been? What is the pulse that you're hearing from your fellow stewardess across the connection? Because for a long period of time, the stewardess could not function in the traditional mode that they did. One of the things that I had my stewardess to do was that on the Saturday before communion, that they made calls, personal phone calls to all of the members to say, do you have your communion table set? doing some of those things and engaging in conversation, knowing that we could not physically be with each other. So Sister Duggar, how have you all survived during the pandemic?
Well, the Stewardess ministry has never during the pandemic. One of our mottos, or one of our qualifications is a will to change.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just like you shift gears. Yeah. There's always new and different ways to do things. So personally at my church, we came together as a stewardesses. We packed up communion, put them in bags, put little mementos in there, letters, just things that, reach out to the membership. When we came together, us, the stewardesses and some of the members, and we delivered the communion. We deliver communion out to the membership. We can do that at Mother Liberty because we're a small congregation. Jackson, Tennessee is not that large. But in other areas, like you say, you do the drive-bys, the members come to the church and pick it up. So it's just, we're not wearing our white on Sunday, but our ministry still carried on. It's just like it was, we had to shift gears and do something and do it different.
Right.
But and for us, we
checking
had
in on the membership.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
For us, we also had to adjust as far as that funerals and stewardess serving at funerals, and we had to just jump in there and put our masks, do everything that we needed to do. We even had our ordination service. Our bishop came and we followed the guidelines. Of course, it was a limited amount of people to serve, but stewardess, we did cleaning. We cleaned behind each speaker. We had to do it all, just roll up our sleeves and get in there, because nothing stops just because it's a pandemic. And this is our commitment. This is what we are trained and ready to do. And it didn't stop Jesus from walking the earth and spreading, and we're following his footsteps. We got to spread whatever we have to spread, helping with the food ministry at the church. And Parkwood is one of the larger churches in the Carolina region and in Charlotte. So we have a large, congregation. So we also, our pastor was institutional in getting the food truck to come at our church once a month. And that's just whatever we needed to do. We just band together and did it.
Awesome. And I think that we can sense that throughout the connection. Let's talk about training for a moment. And how you train. Dr. Harris mentioned a manual. Of course, we are all familiar with Dr. Chambers' book, The Ministry of the of the Stewardess. But would you talk about training stewardess?
Well,
is that question to me?
I'm going to show this. I'm going to show this right here.
To Dr. Harris too, as well. Yes, go ahead.
Okay, go ahead, Dr. Harris. Okay. As I said, this is our manual. Yeah, let me make sure I get. This is our manual. This is the official training manual for the stewardesses of the CME Church. So we encourage every stewardess to have this book. And not only stewardesses, but we encourage members to have the book, because it tells a lot about our history. It talks about communion, the history of communion, and it shares a lot of things that we do in the stewardess ministry. We have the liturgical calendar in there. We have a glossary of terms that are used for the different items within the church. So it's a good training manual. And wherever we go, whenever we come together on the Connectional level, not only on the Connectional level, in your local church, on your district, annual conference, this manual is what we use. And there's so much good information. So we encourage everyone to have this manual and to use it, to read it. I mean, even today before I got on, I read through my manual because I knew there were going to be questions. But it's fresh. Once and put it down. So the manual is something that we should pick up and study study it.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Dr. Harris, you were going to add to that, please, regarding training.
Well, I was just going to simply mention the manual which Sister Duggar has, and one of the things that we have attempted to do throughout the time that we have served in this position is to be sure that there has opportunity for the stewardesses to come together during the Unity Summit.
Right.
And during that time, Connectional President provides training for all those stewardesses that are present. And I think teaching and training and equipping for the ministry that one is a part of is very, very important. And the two individuals that you are interviewing today take that very seriously, as does the other stewardesses across Connection. What I would say is that, and reiterate what Sister Douglas has just mentioned, that I believe it was during the 2014 General Conference that the church adopted the manuals that have been developed under this ministry, the Stewardess Ministry manual, the Usher Ministry manual, the Steward's Handbook, as the official training manuals for our church. And so I saw the manual, the booklet that was placed on the screen, but the one that we assisted our stewardesses in putting together and writing is the official manual, and it is available through our department, and it is also available through the Department of Publications.
That's wonderful. That is good to know. Let me ask you this. Is the Stewardess Board a political organization? Is there posturing and, for office for Stewardess Board president? I mean, it's a group of people. So like any other organization, there's bound to be some challenges. I mean, should it not be a political organization? Should everybody just be able to, sing and pray and get along and serve? Or so y'all tell us the truth. Is it a political organization?
No.
No.
No. No.
I mean, I just know that we have people that inspire to be, leaders, and you want to elevate yourself, but it's not. I assist Sister Duggar in whatever way. One year she was sick, and I did the training, the workshop for her, and this was in, I think, Florida. So we work together. We pull together in whatever area or capacity we need to. So,
I mean, it's like a local level. Churches don't have a lot of students. We all do double duty. We all do what is necessary to get the job done.
Right.
So, yeah. So no, I don't see politics in all.
Okay. Okay. So
like I guess we're just a group of women who love the Lord and love serving in the stewardess ministry and love our church, and we do whatever is necessary.
I really do believe that. I remember when I was pastoring in Athens, one of the beautiful things is that on Sunday morning, on a first Sunday, the stewardess would gather together and pray.
That's right.
That was the first church that I had that the pastor was brought in to pray with the stewardess, and they would wait patiently, and a lot of times, pastors are getting ready for service, doing last minute things for your sermon. And some pastors don't really want, to be disturbed or bothered, but they would just stand there and wait. So I figured I better get with the program and go and pray with my stewardess board, because they were going to wait until I got there. But I thought that was very special in terms of them doing. So, the stewardess board now is over 100 years. You're very much an integral part of the celebration and history of our church. And, there are lots of sisters throughout our denomination who have served and are serving as stewardess. And I think that we are encouraged by some, what you've shared with us. Let's talk about the uniform. Has there ever been any discussion? Somebody asked, well, let's talk about the uniform. Has there ever been any discussion on changing the uniform, or saying that these little doilies, are just old fashioned? I mean, nobody's wearing these doilies anymore. Let me put up a couple of pictures and all, and a good stewardess, worth her salt, wouldn't be caught dead without her little doily on her head. But has there been a discussion about the uniform at all? Changing it, modernizing it,
Oh, yeah.
Oh, it has. Tell us.
One of our problems is trying to find our uniform. That's the
challenge.
That's the challenge
we have right now. The company that makes our uniform no longer makes the uniform.
Okay.
We as the Connectional stewardesses and vice presidents came together a couple months ago, and we talked about this.
Okay.
We're looking at options. A while back when the dress was out there and you could get it, we need to change, but we did not have 100% participation in the uniform that we have now.
Okay.
So it was felt, why change? We're still trying. We still have ladies, students across the church that refuse to buy the uniform that we have. So it's ongoing.
What do they wear, Sister Duggar? If they don't buy the uniform, what is the optional uniform for a stewardess?
There is no option.
Well, I mean,
locally they can come up with their own.
Option, but we see the two-piece uniform, the nurse uniform. We see that.
Right.
I've been across the connection. I've seen it all.
You've seen it all.
Let me just add to that. Skip, I just want to add to something, and I'm sure Jolinda will remember this. My first serving at the general conference in, I think it was Baltimore. Anyway, we had the stewardess there that came, and we had our uniforms, and they came dressed differently, and they were the home church. And unfortunately, I had to sit, because it was in my 7th Episcopal district. I had to let a few of them know that they could not serve with what they had on. And I had a pastor that came to me and pulled me aside and said that this was their home church. They were the host and they needed to be able to serve. And I explained to them, but they are aware of the uniform, and they couldn't wear what they had on because a lot of them had bought suits, brand new suits, and that wasn't a uniform at all. And so He understood, but what we did was we let them be seen and put them toward the front, but they could not serve. And that was my first official duty. And I had to go to Jolinda and say, oh my goodness, what am I going to do? She said, you have to do what you have to do. So uniforms has always been a discussion. But I've been researching some, and we found one like the one we have, similar. I think I gave you that number.
It can be purchased. It can be purchased through Amazon. Yeah, yes. It can be purchased through Amazon.
Yes.
So, yeah. So, but
so what do you say, Sister?
We're looking at options.
Okay, you're looking at options.
Yeah, we're looking at options. Okay. But the present uniform that we have can be purchased through Amazon. Mm-hmm. If you go through, and I please forgive me for not having the name of the company, but if you put in the search and put nurse's uniform or it can find it. So it's you can find it through them.
So, Dr. Harris, let me ask you.
Yes, sir.
So, what if one says, well, that's just too much emphasis on the uniform? Okay, it's on the attire. If you're there to do a ministry, does it matter? Well, of course I know the answer, but still I gotta ask it. I have on white. It may not be the stewardess uniform, but I got on a beautiful white St. John's dress. A suit. Can I serve in that? I spent a lot of money on this. I tithe. I go to Bible study. I do whatever the stewardess asks, but I want to wear my pretty knit suit. So. and I'm asking, because these are questions that we have to ask. We've seen things evolve over the years, okay? And so, is it too much emphasis on it? And if you got a uniform, what is the function of there has to be an underlying reason why you want the stewardess to look a certain way on Sunday morning.
Now, when you say you,
well, not you particularly, but
well, I think Dr. Mason, the example that you were giving, you might liken that to what a presiding prelate might expect when it's time for ordination. I don't think they expect someone to come in a green or red suit for ordination. And there are standards and there are guidelines that they set.
Right.
And I think I said in my earlier remarks that I thought that stewardess ministry is one of the most sacred ministries within our church. And when you think about what we're commemorating when we receive communion, and I'm not saying that you can't be flexible, you can't change and so forth and so on. But the struggle that our stewardesses have in trying to determine what uniform will work for everyone, for the most part, I believe is a very real one. And they're very sincere about trying to determine what will work. But I think if you take away the standards, then it's like any part of our church. We take away standards, we take away certain rules and guidelines and so forth, and we leave ourselves open for many, many things.
Yes.
So in the spirit of flexibility and the spirit of inclusiveness in relation to making decisions, our stewardesses, and I believe at this level, led by Sister Duggar and Sister Duncan and others, really have sincere conversations about what will work best. And I truly believe that there's little room for someone to just refuse to adhere to what has been adopted, what the guidelines are, and then decide they want to make their own rules and have their own dress code.
Mm-hmm.
And the next thing you know, we've got 9 Episcopal districts, and you have 9 different dress codes.
That's true.
And so I say 9, but we have 11. And within the continental United States, we have 9. Somebody, just if you might allow me, I think there was a question about Dr. Dent, who published one of the first Stewardess manuals. What I will say is that manual, the content of that manual, was a big part of the manual that was put together by Mrs. Maxine McCurry, who's now deceased. She took much of what was in that first manual and incorporated it in her manual. If you read, I believe, the foreword, and I don't have the manual Sister Duggar had in front of me right now, but in working and putting that manual together, I believe you will find that the content of that work, much of it is incorporated in this manual. Am I correct, Sister Duggar?
Yes.
And so the work that has been done by the past stewardess has not been lost.
Okay. That's good to hear. Excellent. Very good to hear.
Yeah. Excuse me, if Dr. Mason, if you would let me say this.
Yes, please.
When it comes to the uniform, it's not about us. The spirit it's not about us. It's about whose we are and who we serve. So we got to put self, we have to put self behind us. When you see us work, when you see us in our uniform, it's about who we represent and what we do.
I totally agree. And not only that, it is so very much a part of who we are as Methodists, and as being a church of order, and dignity. Exactly. But I had to push that question though, because it did come up, and we know that you've been wearing those uniforms for years. So I said, well, at least let me ask and see if they've ever discussed it at all, because, who would have ever thought that pastors would not preach in robes, And so now you have pastors preaching in robes. You have pastors preaching in dashikis, Skip Mason. You have pastors preaching, and so I guess, but everything has to have a level of standard, and that the attention is focused on God and not on the individual. Well, as we get ready to wrap up, give me some final thoughts, if you would, about the future of the Stewardess in our church. We are headed to a general conference next year. Is there anything that the Stewardess across the connection are looking for? Are there issues pertaining to your organization that you've shared with Dr. Harris? Any changes that might be made in the discipline, with regards to the Stewardess? And so give me your closing thoughts. I'm going to start with you, Sister Duncan, and then Dr. Harris, and then Sister Duggar. I'll let you have the final words as our connectional president. Sister Duncan?
Well, I don't think that the Stewardess is going to disappear. No, I think this is a board, if anything, will get stronger and become more widespread. And I just see us as the backbone, one of the backbone boards of the CME Church. And we're here to serve our bishops, our elders, our general officers. We serve everyone that we're supposed to serve.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Sister Duncan. Dr. Harris, any closing thoughts?
Well, in relation to your question, Dr. Mason, I think that going forward, the stewardesses have an excellent opportunity. Really, I think they have a head start on what I see or direction that the church is going, and the emphasis on ministry and the Great Commission. And I don't see their work changing to the point that they become non-existent, and that what they do becomes watered down. I think that what they have an opportunity to increase their presence and to embrace what it means to continue to do ministry and be an intricate part of the Christian Methodist Episcopal Church at all levels.
Mm-hmm. Yes, indeed. Thank you so much, Dr. Harris. President Duggar, your closing thoughts?
I just like to commend all the ladies, all the students across the Connectional Church, who Sunday after Sunday, week after week, month after month, continue to do the work of the Stewardess ministry. I'm grateful. I'm grateful for everything that they do. A lot of times the things that we do go unnoticed, go unappreciated, but we're still here. We're not going anywhere, as Sister Duncan says. So as we gather, the next time we gather together as a Connectional Church, you'll see the stewardesses there in our white, in our prayer cap. We'll be there doing what God has put in our hearts to do. And we're grateful. I'm grateful every day to be a part, and that someone saw something in me to elevate me to this position. But I'm just a servant. I just do where God puts me and what God has for me to do. And I'll continue to do that to the day that I'm no longer here.
Well, one of the things that you all do as I prepare to close, that has pretty much gone unnoticed and unspoken, is when the pastor opens the doors of the church, or the door of the church, and the stewardess will come and stand on the left and right side. And if someone decides in that moment, which I think is one of the most important moments in the worship experience, where someone is deciding that they are going to stand up and walk down the aisle to receive Christ, to rededicate their life, that typically after the pastor engages with them, the stewardess are there with open arms to receive them and embrace them. I think for me, that is just such an important part, of the ministry of receiving God's people. That is the moment sometime when the broken and the rejected and the hurt will come, and that hug is instrumental, that laying of hands, that's so true. Moment between the one that comes and the stewardess. Even when you sit down, in some churches, it may be somebody else, it just depends. Some stewardess will sit down and collect information about the person that's joining, and so you then, I tell my ushers, and I've said this, I said, be very careful always, because you never know, what your interaction, what it's going to do. Okay. From the time you pull in the parking lot or you walk coming into church until making that moment. So God bless you all and your tremendous ministry, and to all of the stewardess across our wonderful connection. Today was your day. We celebrated you. And I know all of us in some cases are looking forward to getting back into our churches and celebrating. And as I open, I certainly want to shout out to my mother, who served on the stewardess board for 30 years at Westside Unity CME Church. And I used to tell my mom, I said, dog, every time I look up, you having to serve on First Sunday. Aren't there some other stewardess in the church serving? But whatever the schedule was, she followed it, and she served faithfully. And so God bless all of you, and thank you so much for joining me today on another CME conversation. And we certainly will look forward to seeing the women in white at the general conference for the opening communion. That is a spectacle. That is something to behold.
Amen.
When we celebrate communion,
we'll be there.
And God willing, I cannot wait to see you in Cincinnati. God bless you all. And we're going to close with God
this. Bless.
Thank you.
Church. When we were asking a question, you make a statement, and you're to answer as this person. We invite you to be open to the presence of God and the Spirit of God. Amen. You have faced challenges when you felt most vulnerable. But you must realize that before you reach out to others, you must reach in to understand yourselves. It is from admitted mistakes that you grow. Seek to see the face of God in others you serve, and experience God's hand on your